As a business leader, are you worried about staying competitive? If your competitors outpace you, then you could lose your market share as well as your customers. How can you avoid this undesirable chain of events? One factor that establishes your competitive edge is the effectiveness of your business processes. Ineffective business processes can lead to inconsistent results, increased expenses, and even reduced revenue. To avoid this, you'll need to keep your business processes on track. Doing this takes dedication, thought, and a proven methodology for continuous improvement. That's where Kaizen comes in, which we'll be discussing today. I'm Sissy here with Jotform. Let's get started. Kaizen originated in Japan and means change for the better. It's a continuous improvement methodology based on the idea that everything can be improved, even things that appear to be fine. Organizations that utilize the Kaizen methodology are focused on improving all business processes, even those that are producing acceptable results. Even if something is okay right now, it could always be better in the future. Some organizations used what's called Kaizen events to jumpstart their improvement efforts. They start by identifying a process that could use improvement, then name an event organizer. The organizer then pulls together a cross-functional group of people to focus on solving the problem. The event usually lasts 3 to 5 days, and the group can include employees, suppliers, or even customers. A Kaizen event allows your team to dedicate time and energy to really unpack the problem areas and generate solutions to improve the process. The event organizers start by reviewing the problem, walking through the process, brainstorming solutions, and sometimes making changes on the spot. Then, observers will monitor and record what happens when making these changes. Afterward, they will regroup and discuss what changes are final. One good example of this concept in practice can be found in the manufacturing industry. The Kaizen event participants will walk through the facility to analyze the manufacturing process, stop the production or assembly line to ask workers some questions, and brainstorm possible changes. In some cases, participants are able to make those changes immediately and observe the results, which is known as experimenting live. Then, participants meet to see which production line changes would make the most sense moving forward. Kaizen events can even be used in hospitals. The hospital staff will walk through a typical patient scenario to find improvement areas. For example, one hospital made physical changes to the workplace to better accommodate patients. They rearranged equipment and staff assignments so that most of their patients only had to go to one room after being admitted rather than 2 or 3. This saves time for both the hospital workers and patients in the long run. Kaizen is a great tool for generating ideas and making improvements quickly. You can also gain different perspectives using this method by bringing together people from different business areas, including inside and outside of the organization. Now, let's look at the history behind Kaizen. In the aftermath of World War II, Japan needed a way to recover efficiently with limited resources. They worked with American engineers to develop a system that eventually became the Kaizen methodology we use today. The system was called the Plan to Do Study Act, or PDSA, and it was designed to test organizational changes to see if they delivered any improvement. Kaizen even predates the popular Six Sigma and Lean methodology. Kaizen doesn't only need to be used in the business world. You can also use it for personal matters. For instance, let's say your goal is to lose weight. What do you have to do to reach that goal? The answer is usually eating better and exercising more. Most people's response to this recommendation is that they don't have enough time. When applying Kaizen to this process, it means that you'll have to take a step back and look at what is consuming your time. If you notice that you're spending an hour on social media every day, then you should reduce or eliminate this activity. By doing so, you'll have more time for prepping meals and exercising. Now, let's look at the 5 key principles that guide continuous improvement across your organization. First, know your customer. You need to have a full understanding of your customers' needs and perspectives. When you understand what your customers need, you can create products and services that fulfill those needs, thus creating value. Next, let it flow. With Kaizen, it should be your aim to eliminate waste from your processes. It's about understanding the value system and identifying where in the process you have value-added activities versus non-value-added activities. With this knowledge, you can make changes accordingly. The next step is to go to Gemba. Gemba translates to the real place, which is referred to as the spot where the action is. Once you understand the process, you can go directly to the areas where you believe issues exist. Then bring together the right people to focus on those areas and make improvements. This means physically going to the shop floor or hospital waiting room, for example. Next, empower people. This focuses on the human element of continuous process improvement. You need to involve people from across your organization to ensure that you consider multiple perspectives and arrive at the best solution. By empowering your team, it means that you're giving them the appropriate resources and direction not only to complete the design process, but identify and make improvements going forward. And lastly, be transparent. You need to develop appropriate metrics in order to measure performance. These metrics should also be visible to everyone involved. If you can't measure your improvement, then you won't know whether your Kaizen efforts were successful or not. Now, let's look at some tips for effectively executing Kaizen events. First, recognize the importance of preparation and facilitation. There's a misconception that Kaizen events don't require any preparation, which is simply not the case. Your Kaizen event will also need a strong facilitator who can manage a large group of diverse folks. You might even need to assign multiple facilitators rather than forcing one facilitator to shoulder the burden. This often yields better results. In order to prepare, you'll need to map the process and gather data about current performance. You won't want to gather people in a room with a whiteboard and hope for the best. It's best to have the appropriate data and a clear format for how event meetings will proceed. Next, make sure that you select the right members for your team. You already know that you need to get people who are close to the problem, but you also need people in leadership positions who are empowered to make decisions. Simply knowing where a problem is and how to fix it is not enough. You'll need someone with authority to ensure that the solution is actually approved and implemented. Then, make sure that your process changes are supported with the right resources. Leadership is not the only important aspect to consider for a Kaizen event. Even if you have the right authority, it won't matter if you lack the resources needed to make those changes a reality. Your resources include things like budget, staffing, and possibly third-party assistance. In the hospital example that I mentioned earlier, they had to make physical changes to the hospital building, which included knocking down walls and removing structural elements. This required outside assistance from a third party with appropriate expertise. Next, handle your external parties with care. Most Kaizen events will include outside parties, like customers and suppliers. You likely won't need to include these parties throughout the whole event, but only when they are relevant. A 5-day Kaizen event may involve suppliers coming in for activities on the second day and customers coming in for activities on the third day. Since they are part of the process, you will want their feedback, but you probably don't want them to hear all of the ins and outs of your internal operations. Consider having customers and suppliers sign NDAs before participating in a Kaizen event. This will allow you to protect your company's intellectual property and trade secrets. And finally, always follow up on your process changes. Check in and evaluate whatever solution or fixes you have put into place. The things that work today may need improvements next quarter or next year. Okay, let's review. Today, we discussed Kaizen, which is a method based on the idea that everything can be improved. Kaizen events are for teams to focus on a problem area and to brainstorm ideas on how to fix it. The main principles of Kaizen are to know your customer, let the process flow, go to Gemba, the real place, empower people, and be transparent with your team. To implement an effective Kaizen event, you'll need to prepare properly, select the right team members, make sure you have the right resources, handle your external parties with care, and follow up on process changes that you've made. When implemented properly, Kaizen and Kaizen events can be extremely helpful in improving business processes. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope this video was helpful. I'm Sissy, here with Jotform. Have a good one.